All right. It is time for Sessions with Sam. Who's excited? Make sure I'm muted here on all my screens going on. Hey, so here's what just happened. I realized we're getting ready to start, and I did not have my Dr. Pepper poured, so I've run through the house panically. My house is built in stacks, so I have lots of stairs. So, I'm out of breath, but I do got my Dr. Pepper. I got my Serverless for Everyone t-shirt. It must be time with Sessions for Sam. I'm excited. Hello to all you watching. Today, I'm really excited about today. If you've been watching on Twitter, I've been building this for last week. I'm excited to show you what we've got. We've already had a question, what's cooking today? What's cooking today is custom domains. And this kind of trips people up a little bit on how these work and stuff. So today we're going to talk about what does a custom domain look like for an HTTP API? What does a custom domain look like for a REST API? What does it look like when I want to do both? And there's a couple of ways of doing that. You can do it in a declared method or an implied method or an implied approach. So we're going to jump on that. And this is where being fat does not help because I'm totally out of breath. So my house is 3 stories. And so, and I'm in the basement. All right, so let's get started. So I'm not even going to joke around today. Okay, good. I'm not even going to joke around today. I'm not going to type any of the template. I've put a lot of the template in here. In fact, we're going to look at 4 templates. Okay, now, if you know anything about me, that is a 4, even though I'm saying 1. That's as high as I can get unless I take my shoes off, then it gets awkward for everybody. So any number I want it to be, that's the rule. So we're going to look at 4 templates. So, and in professionalness, I'm going to take my face off the screen, which has been, a big problem previously. So we should now see code. And I'm going to ask real quick, is that big enough? Can y'all look at that? Can you see the text that we're looking at? All right. Yay, code. Yay. Okay. So today, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to maybe 1 bigger. Okay. I can do 1. Boom. How's that? Are we happy? All I want is for Rob to be happy. Cookie Pants, are you out there? All right, a bit bigger, please. All right, are we happy with that? Typo on description. Oh, it says custom domain. Oh, yeah. It's okay if there's a typo on description because, domain, yeah, there it is. Let's just fix that because there it is. Wow, that was really quick. .NET Now, .NET Dev, that was really fast. I'm impressed with that. And most of the time it takes me a good 3 or 4 hours to find my spelling errors, and it's always in code. So, all right, let's get started. So before we even talk about the template, because it can take a little while to launch this, we're going to go ahead and create 1 custom domain. Okay. Now I have a domain that I use. You'll see it. In fact, let's go ahead and pop in some links real quick here. Okay. And one of the things you'll see is there's a slip.link domain. It's one of the few ones. That's my URL shortener that I built. That was built, I've talked about in several other episodes, that it is built completely serverless and doesn't even use Lambda. It's built all with API Gateway and DynamoDB. And so I own this domain called slip.link. So we're going to use that for our custom domain state. And I already have a zone file created. So let's take a look at that real quick so that makes sense. If you think about the way custom domains work, what's going to happen is you create a custom domain that gives an endpoint, and then that endpoint you can point to with your zone, with a zone like an A record or an alias. Okay, so the zone I have is called slip.link, and you can see in here I've already created some of these other ones we're going to talk about, like declared, implied, and REST. You can also see these CNAME records, and those are important because those help to validate for the certificate. So the best way to show you is through examples. So let's jump back to code real quick here. And slip.link.shorty. Thanks, Rob. All right, so we're going to do a SAM deploy -G. Now, a couple of things on the parameters. First thing I want to pass in is a domain name. Then I'm asking for a zone ID. However, if I don't pass the zone ID, it's going to set it to default or to none. I'm also going to ask for a cert ARN, and this is a certificate, an SSL certificate provided by the Amazon Certificate Manager, and it has an ARN. If I don't provide that, it's going to create that as well. So I have some conditions, and I say if I did not pass in a zone or if it equals none, then we create the zone. Now, we're not going to do that today because that takes a little while. So we're not going to create zones, but this will create a zone for you. All right. It also does the cert. We are going to create the cert because I want you to see that, and I want you to see what it looks like to dynamically build that out and how SAM handles that for you. And then we'll talk about the rest of the template in a little bit. So let's go ahead and start our deploy. Now I'm going to say SAM deploy -G because I want to set this up. And of course, we got an error right up front. We got two errors going on. Number one, I haven't turned on my profile, so let's do that. I'm going to do that every time we talk, and I'm not proud of that, but that's where it is. Then we're going to get into the folder that we're working in, and we're going to actually work in the HTTP folder. Okay, all right, so let's try that again. All righty. And if you're not familiar with the ASP Johnson demo, we talked about a couple other ones. That's just a ZSH shortcut to turn on profiles. I do that because I work with a lot of different profiles. All right, so we're going to name this CD for custom domain HTTP. This is specific to an HTTP API. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I always work in US West 2. All righty. Now here's what do I want the domain to be called. All righty. Yes, that's a good, yeah, rock. Okay, good. So here's what I want the domain to be called. We're going to call it actually http.slip.link. Very simple. Just saying, hey, that's going to be my domain. And I can, I could http.helloworld.slip.link, but it has to end in .slip.link because that's my domain. And that's what the hosted zone has. All right. Here is where I come in. If I don't have a zone set up, I'm going to hit enter and take none as the default. I do have a zone. We're not going to show setting up a zone because that'll probably take a little longer than what we've got in this show. But if you don't have it, if you don't have a zone set up, then it will create it. And so the way this zone is already set up with my DNS, my registrar pointing at it, everything like that. If I have my template set up a zone, then I have to go in after the fact and set up my registrar to point at the name servers for this. So a little out of scope for, we're not going to get into, registrars and name servers and things like that, but glad to answer that offline if we need to, if you're confused about that. All right, so let's go back to our template. So here's that hosted zone ID that I need. It's for my slip.link hosted zone. So I'm going to pop over real quick, and I'm going to add that here. Okay, now for my cert ARN, I don't have one. I haven't created a certificate for http.slip.link. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say none here and let it do that. Okay, confirm my changes. Nope, I don't need to confirm my changes. Allow SAM. Yes, I need to do that. Now here's a new thing. If you've grabbed the latest version of the SAM CLI, they've rolled in some things to help you know, hey, you're deploying an unsecured function. See, I've got a function down here, and I don't have any authentication set up on HTTP API gateway, and they're going to say, is that okay? If you say no, it's not going to deploy. So I need to do that, and now I'm going to save my arguments to my config file, and off we go. So what it's going to do, like normal, it's going to go out and it's going to create a change set, and it's going to, hey, how's it going, Earl George? How are you? Okay, rock and roll. Yep, Evalac 47. I'm sure I'm not saying that right, but I still say the handle's better than Rob Setter has ever said mine. So, okay, so let's watch this down here, and I'm going to bring this terminal up so you can see this. So, thanks. Glad you're here. Alrighty, and so what it's done here is it said, yep, I'm going to create all of this. And now I'm going to start creating it. And in just a minute, you're going to see the generated cert create. Hang on just a minute. Oh. Just a minute. So right here is what, there it is. There it is. So the generated cert, okay? So it started the creation here. Now you gotta watch in here, okay? So I'm saying create in progress, and here's the information. I'm using DNS to verify that I own this domain. So what it's saying is, hey, if you own this domain, then I want you to put a CNAME record in with this name and value. So let me show you how to do that. Now, the copying of this is a little weird because I've blown this text way up so y'all can see it. So it's going to be kind of small. So usually it's long enough, but let me show you how this is working. Alrighty? Nope. Yep. This is the SAM CLI. That's exactly right. So I'm going to pop back over to my to Route 53, and I'm in my hosted zone, and I'm going to create a record set. Okay. Let me blow this up. This is probably kind of small. Is that better? Can y'all see that? Alrighty. So in my record set, I want to put the value that's shown in here, okay? So the value is on 2 different lines. Now I need everything up to just before the .slip.link. So I'm going to copy this part, and I'll show you up here kind of exactly what it looks like. If I can get in there. All right, so here's my name, okay? It's that whole record that it had me put in, .slip.link. It needs to be a C name. And then I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to grab the value. So it says the type of C name, the value is this. Now, if you're doing this manually, if you actually go in and you go to the ACM, the certificate manager, it can actually create this for you. So, or you can manually create it. There's several different ways. So this one, because our text is so scrunched, it has 3 lines that I need to copy. And you may be saying, why don't you just copy the whole thing at once? Well, the way Sam outputs some stuff, I'll show you in just a minute. That's not always the most helpful thing. So let me drop back here. And actually, let me go. So now we have the value. So I'm going to create that. So now that record is created, and it's the one that ends in HTTP. We might need to refresh this to see it. Okay, declared. I might have missed part of it. Hang on a sec. No, that's it right there. Okay, there it is. HTTP. So it's adding that. So that record now tells, now what's going to happen is CloudFormation is going to keep checking. So notice this is still sitting here running. Okay, and it's saying, all right, I've given you some information. Put that into your zone option, or put that in as a zone record, and I'll validate it. So while we're waiting on that, I'm going to pop over here and look, see if we've got any questions going on. All righty. Some comments about the shortcuts. And welcome to the Matrix. What tool are you using to deploy? I am using the SAM CLI. This show will always use the SAM CLI. I love the other tools. CDK is great. Terraform's great. CloudFormation's awesome. SAM CLI is actually, SAM CLI uses CloudFormation or the SAM templates in the background, which are on top of CloudFormation. So, so SAM CLI, and that's what this show is all about. Yep, CFN output. Yeah, it's very handy. This is something new we did in the deploy process at the end of last year. All right, any other questions while we're waiting? Right, yes, the CFN is waiting. So, and it can take a little while, because I probably took a little while to add it, but it could take just a little while to add it in there. So we're looking, you know what? I actually think, we might have to redo this. I really think that I put that in wrong. I think I may have copied an extra value. So we're going to go back and check. Let's see here. I'm going to put it in again. So we might have to do this again, because what I noticed is I've got this extraneous value at the end here. And I don't think that's right. So let's go ahead and just create another one. I'm glad to do this right. I missed it. Thanks, Rob Sutter. All right. So we're just going to re-enter this real quick. Now this may blow up for the reasons that I just showed you. I think I missed something. So let's just put this in here. Okay. All right. Let's make sure that's going to have 2 3s. Yeah, it doesn't. Okay. All right. 3E. Okay. There we go. All right. Add sublink. We're going to make an alias. Okay. All right. I missed a 3. Seriously. All righty. Well, I'm just going to re-add it and see if we can catch it on time for it to not blow up. Let's see in just a minute. Okay. You need to go to the end of the line in the text box, okay? Give me a minute. Give me a minute. Even in this new one, I missed a 3, are you saying? All righty. In a second. This is kind of a painful way to doing that. And this is, again, this is just because we've blown the text way up. All right. You generally won't deal with this. See? Okay. You are pasting in the middle of the text. Okay, you're killing me. You're absolutely killing me. So let's do this. So you think that looks wrong? I don't think I am. All righty. All right. So we'll repost that. I think you're right. Okay, I see what you're saying. So we'll repost that. And I really wish I were smarter, but apparently I'm not. So let's just do this again. So we're going to say the value here. I see what you're saying, Rob Sutter. You're awesome. Maybe we should set up a step function to handle this for us. What do you think? Okay. All righty. So it hasn't validated yet. So I see what you're saying. I need to go to the end here like so and paste that. How am I looking? All right. All right. I got it. Good. So let's create that one. Okay, that looks more proper. I'm going to kill this one here, and let's see if it catches it. If it doesn't, that's okay. Then we could do that. Couldn't you add a CNAME to Route 53 using? You know, I could. Yeah, you can add a record set. In fact, one of the other ones I will show how to do that. The problem is you don't know in this where CloudFormation is going to stop and wait, right? Because I need the value of this. Okay. I need the value of this before, so I would need to reference this, but the CloudFormation will stop right after it generates this, so it may not actually create that record. So great recommendation, but it won't work in this instance, but I do show in another one while we're doing that. So while this is going, let's see if that validates now that I've got that new one in there, because it does seem to be still sitting out there. And let's see if yeah, so we're gonna delete this record set because I blew that one all up. Okay, so let's see if that still goes. And while that's doing that, I want to actually talk through the template so you can see what it is so we don't waste time, okay? So we'll let that run and then we'll see if it comes through. All right, so let's talk through the template, okay? So I already explained the parameters, and you don't have to do it this way. I just find it easier, okay? And then here's the conditions to set those up where I say if I pass that in. So the first thing I'm going to do is if I need to, I'm going to generate a zone. And the only thing it needs is it's going to need a domain name, okay? Now I didn't need to in this because I passed a zone name in. But all I got to do is say this is the domain name. So when I pass it in, the http.slip.link, right? And that would create that. The next thing I'm going to do is, if needed, I create a certificate, and this does it through the Amazon certificate management. You can see it right there. And all I'm passing in is I say I want the domain name that I'm going to create it for, and I'm going to use the DNS validation. You can also use email validation. If you've got email set up, I don't for slip.link, but if you've got email set up, you can use email validation as well. All right, so it looks like I did something for a static website with S3 CloudFront route. Okay, all righty. Okay, yeah, so yeah, you definitely can do it in here. All right. So the next thing is, and this is really where we're kind of interested in seeing, this is this is where we actually create the domain, okay? So what happens is we need to pass it a domain name, and I'm doing this right, notice I'm doing it right in the HTTP API. So it's an implied way of creating this. I'm not implicitly creating the domain. I'm doing it. I'm implying it through the actual HTTP API. So I'm passing. This is a bare minimum HTTP API. I pass in a properties, and the only property I'm passing right now is domain. And then I pass it the name I want the domain, the certificate ARN that should work, and then the hosted zone. Okay, and the Route 53 will actually create the hosted zone. So now that hosted zone, and I'm doing some if checks. I'm saying if I'm supposed to create a cert, then use the cert I create. If not, use the cert passed in. If I'm supposed to create a zone, then use the zone I created. If not, then use the zone ID I passed in, okay? And the last thing I do is I create a function to actually work with this, okay? And I think here's what happened. We'll see if this completes, but I think when it tried, it's now kind of waiting to try again. So we'll see what happens. We might kill this and try it in another stack in a few minutes. All right, so that's how you do an HTTP API gateway one. Pretty simple. We pass a domain name, a cert, and a zone ID. Okay, there are some other things. We can pass a base path, so we can actually, this will set it up. Because I'm not passing a base path, this will set it up on the root of the default stage on HTTP API. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So I'm going to jump over. We've got 11 minutes left, so I'm going to jump over. Oh, here we go. Yeah, verified, and it's going. Who's excited? I'm excited, okay? So once this goes, we'll try it in just a minute here. So I'm going to jump over to the REST API. We'll walk through the REST API one as well. It looks very similar, and I've actually already created that one. So let's jump over to that template. Okay, and we'll hope nothing else here. The record sets can take a little while to create. All right, so in this should look the exact same. We're doing the parameters, the conditions, the generated zone, the generated cert, and looky there, our API is up and running. We'll try that in just a minute. Now, on a REST API gateway. Now notice this is a type serverless API instead of HTTP API. It's pretty much the same, except I have to pass a stage name. It's not going to automatically build a default stage. Past that, I'm going to pass in a domain name, a certificate ARN, and a Route 53 hosted zone. This should look very familiar. Now, one thing's interesting. This is a very basic API. If I launch this without a function attached. Now this function is saying it's tying it to that REST API and it's doing a method and a resource. If I were to comment this out, this will blow up and say, hey, you don't have any methods or resources. So make sure you either declare the methods and resources in the API gateway through OpenAPI or through a function that's attached to it that declares those. So something to take note of. All right, so let's go and see if our API worked. Now we named it. So first of all, I have to do HTTPS, and we named it actually http://slip.link. All right, moment of truth. Looky there. And all this does is return an event. So I have a custom domain that I set up in really more time than it took because I put that data in wrong. And if Rob Sutter weren't here, I'd probably be in tears right now. But so that gives you an idea of how that works to create that. All right, show me potatoes. There it is. What's up? So let's look at how to do both. Okay, so this is where I've felt a lot of people have gotten hung up on. And again, there's two ways of doing it, and it's really personal preference. Okay, so and at the end of this show, I'm going to push all. It's ready to be pushed out to the repo, so you can grab that, and that's in the links. And I'll go ahead and post that. Actually, it's in GitHub. Watch this, GitHub. Oh, here we go. Boom. Okay, that is the repo that we post to. If it comes up, I may have failed on that. There, links. It's in there too. So yes, thank you, Evalac47. Alrighty, so all right, so let's look at the declared way of doing this, and let me explain what that means. Okay, we're gonna pull this down. We're not gonna do any more deploying, so I'm gonna get rid of my terminal for right now. Okay, there is it now. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's GitHub. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Slip.link SWS, okay? So let's look at this template. This is the declared way of doing it. We only have a few minutes, so I'm going to kind of buzz through this. This all looks the same. You remember what this does was generated zone, generated cert. Now, here's where we get different, okay? Notice I'm not doing this as part of the HTTP API or the REST API. I'm actually declaring it as its own entity. Okay, and it builds it out. So there, I'm actually doing an AWS API Gateway v2 domain name. Now, mapping will work, and I'll explain it. The mappings will work even if it's a v2 mapping here, but you're using a v1 stage, it will still work. Okay. So all I'm doing is I'm declaring, here's what I want the domain name to be. Here's the configuration. The endpoint type is regional, which HTTP APIs are all regional. Howdy. Hussein Abbasi, how are you? Glad to see you there. And then I pass the certificate on, and again, if we pass it in, use it. If not, generate a new one. So for the mapping, now I do actual mappings, okay? So what that's going to do is I'm going to say I have an HTTP API created down here, and I have a REST API created down here. Again, both very simple. Also, here's the functions to do it with. Now I need to mapping, and the mapping says I'm going to connect a custom domain name to an API gateway. All right, so let's look at the first one. HTTP API mapping says I need the API ID, so I grab that from the HTTP API ID. I need the mapping key, and this just says, where do you want it to appear? I want it to appear under the folder of HTTP. So in this, and I'm calling this declared.slip.link/HTTP will follow this mapping. The domain name, so I actually grab the custom domain name that I created above, and the stage. Now, this gets a little complicated. You have to understand how CloudFormation or SAM names resources. It generates names. See this long name, HTTP API Gateway default stage? Here's how it puts it together. And you can tell this by going in. If you deploy it once, you can see how it'll create those. But basically, it takes the logical name of the resource, HTTP API mapping. It adds the word API Gateway. Then it takes the stage name. So in our case, it's a default stage for HTTP API. and then it adds the word stage. And that's a little complex, and I get that. So for REST API, we can do the same mapping. It looks the same way. API key, a mapping key. This one does a little different. It uses the logical name plus the stage name plus the word stage. So in mine, I actually used prod. So that's how I can build that out. Then I actually create bare minimums of my API gateways, and then I add the functions for them to work. Okay, and that will create a declared version of this. Okay. So let's go to the implied version, okay? And this I'm not gonna lie, I did the little happy dance of joy around the house here the other day. Told my wife, she doesn't care. She's like, well, she cares, but she's like, okay, hey, great. But I was pretty excited when I figured this out, okay? So why use declarative or implied, right? So if you remember, if we go back and it'll show it here, if we're building, we can actually create the custom domain right in the HTTP API resource. In the back end, what it does is it actually goes out and breaks those declarative things out. If I put a domain on HTTP API gateway and I did another one in REST, guess what it does? It tries to make, and I want them to be the same domain, it tries to make two separate custom domains with the same name. So they conflict and the whole thing blows up. So the way to work around that is use one to create it implied and then reference that from the other. Okay, so let me walk through that. So I'm going to use in HTTP API, I'm going to use the property of domain, and I'm going to do just like we did before. I'm going to do domain name. I'm going to do a route. This time I'm passing a base path because I want it to actually be, if you hit this domain and you /HTTP, go to my HTTP API, and then for the rest, we go to REST. Okay. So, alrighty. Okay. So now I'm going to go HTTP API. Function here, so that's just the function to do it. So for the REST API, notice all I'm doing is creating a simple REST API. I'm not declaring a domain in this, and now I do the mapping. So here's where we get tricky, and here's why I was like, woo, I'm so proud of myself, okay? So standard mapping, just like we saw in the declarative version earlier, I'm going to say properties, API ID, API mapping, stuff like that. However, I have to make sure that HTTP API has created its domain first, okay? Because they're not directly reliant on each other, it could try to create the HTTP and the REST API at the same time, and it will blow up on that mapping. So what I do is I use a depends on flag, okay? And I say it depends on the HTTP API gateway HTTP API mapping. So what that says is the HTTP API has to have its mapping created before you try to do the REST API mapping. So logically, the domain has to be created first before the mapping. And so now I know that those are in place before I do it. Okay, I hope that makes sense. You might have to watch the video a couple times. You might have to call me out on Twitter to ask questions or, just make fun of me either way. Finally, I do the different functions. Okay, so let's see it in action. Now, real quick on this declared and implied, up to you how you want to do it. I would probably go declared because I have a little bit more control. And so I can kind of see that, and I'm not trying to guess at the names, but you can do it both ways, right? Now, one call out I will tell you, I did find a bug in this, and I've already reported it, and we're looking at doing that. If you launch it and then you try to and it's with any of them, even with the simple HTTP one, and you try to reset the mapping, the base path, it may blow up and give you an answer like you can't have more than one, something like that. And what's happening is there's a race condition going on where it's trying to create a new base. If I actually modify this, rather than removing the old and then adding the new, it tries to add the new, then remove the old, and it runs into some issues. And we're going to fix that. But if you have issues, you're like, look, I put it up with the base path. Now I want to remove that or modify that. In the console, you can delete those, and then your stack will work fine. And we're getting that fixed as soon as we can. So that's something that we found last night. So let's look at these in action to make sure I actually know what I'm talking about, which I do not claim to know what I'm talking about at any time. So let's blow this up. So a couple of the ones we created. So domains, first of all, I have declared.slip.link. So this is how we built it with the declared version. So we go HTTPS declared.slip.link, and then I'm going to go forward HTTP, And there's our data. So what happens if I go forward rest? So we'll go like this, and I get the hello from Lambda, and there you go. So now let's change it over to the implied. Okay, hello from Lambda, good. Let's do HTTP. Okay, there you go. And then the very last one we did, HTTPS, that we didn't actually build together, but just so you can see it, slip.link, and hello from Lambda. There you go. That is custom domains. I know you can't have a custom domain. Boy, yeah, my text is small. I'm sorry about that, guys. I know you can't have a custom domain with a private API. Would there be a way to approximate it with a regional API? Perhaps some kind of resource policy that restricts. Yes, you can use resource policies with API REST APIs. Okay, so API Gateway REST APIs. You can add a resource policy that can limit to VPCs. You can limit to different IP whitelist, blacklist, different things like that. So that is a way to do that. So. All right, with that, we are at time. Man, let's do one thing real quick before we do this, just so you have it. Bring my terminal back up, and we'll do a. Oh, come on, terminal. Okay, we're going to do git status. All righty, we're going to add all that goodness. We're going to do a git commit. Sam. And we're adding custom domains. Okay, so let's go ahead and folks, that is available for consumption or critique. Let me know if you have any problems. Find me on EDJ Geek on Twitter. And so I'm at EDJ Geek. And I will tell you, we've got some other things coming up real quick. If you need more serverless, which you always do, head on over to Rob Sutter, twitch.tv, Rob Sutter, my man Rob Sutter, who's in here, and he's throwing out some more leaks and stuff. But you can see we have App 2025, which is building this app on how you should do it in the future. Well now, but the future. And that's, again, Twitch TV, Rob Sutter. Next week, I am taking a hiatus from Sessions with Sam for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, only because we have our serverless first function, which you can register at slip.link SFF, and that is where my man Rob Sutter, James Beswick, Ben Smith, and Chris Munns will be there, and we'll be doing all kinds of stuff about serverless. So we're going to walk through from beginning to end through the whole session. We're going to take an app and show how to build it, how to put wrap CI/CD around it, how to wrap security around it, how to do observability, and there for live questions. Next week is that's on the 28th. On the 21st is more our executive group are going to be talking about the power of serverless, enterprise serverless, different things like that. So I encourage you to register. It will be hosted on Twitch. And with that, I'm out of here, and we'll see you at the serverless first function. And in 3 weeks from now, we'll be back with more Sessions with Sam. In fact, I'll be posting a poll to see what you want to see. Have a great day. Stay safe.